If you've been on the tube in London, you'll know that it's often fairly warm down there. All of that heat is generated by lights, trains and people, and has been trapped for over a century, kept there by the clay bedrock that surrounds and insulates the tunnels. A problem with the very foundation of the London Underground. There have been many recent efforts to combat this, led by Transport for London's Cooling the Tube project. One of those solutions is what you can currently hear. A bit annoying, isn't it? Mid-tunnel vent shafts are placed along the tunnels and are designed to expel hot air from the network. Where these are placed, however, can cause serious problems for the people around them. I first found out about these things walking down Antill Road in Tottenham Hale, which is where this recording was taken, just a mere 6 foot away from someone's front door. I wanted to know how the residents there felt about it.
I'm Theo Akufo-Jones. I thought that was a power for the lights at first. That's what I thought it was. Now you told me it's from the underground. They could have built that anywhere. They put it right on the corner of neighbourhoods. Me and my neighbours always complain about that noise. And I can hear it constantly, just the buzzing. Bzzz. From 6 onwards, you're hearing this all the way through to the night.
And when you were looking at living here, was it on? Did it make a noise? What did
I didn't realise it, because when I first come, it was in the night time. Didn't realise nothing at all until when we used to sit down, before my ex-wife left, before we used to sit down and we used to hear the noise. It was constantly on. We couldn't switch it off. We didn't know how to tell them to complain to switch it off. We thought it was something in the flat, but it was that. It's been on like this for 6 years. We just had to live with it.
So how's it affecting you personally?
Personally, if I sleep in the front room, if I drop asleep in the front room, I have to get up because I can't take the noise. I just cannot take that noise. Like the buzzing noise is nagging. It's constantly, you hear it every day. You're lying down and it's that buzzing. I don't know if it's switching on or switching off. We just don't know. After about 7, 8, 9 o'clock, 10, if you sit down 11, you can hear it right across the road. It's constantly a nagging noise. It buzzes. If you sit down at night time, about 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, the buzzing is so horrendous. And sometimes if you walk around in the daytime, you can hear it.
Theo also notices a slight hypocrisy in the promotion of ultra-low emission zones and the placement of these structures.
That is causing harm to people. If they talk about global warming and congestion charges, UEZ, I hope they hear this, right? It's pumping dirt out. It's not pumping. You see, this is the thing. All the vents and all that is causing noise pollution. Dirt is coming out constantly. One day I had my car parked out there. I don't know where this brown dust come from. I don't know where this brown dust come from. It's just like one night, whoom. I said, but hold on, this looked like sand. Everybody come out, looked at it. Where does this come from? It could be that. When it blows out the thing and it carries it out in the air. So what are we breathing in?
And it's facing pretty much directly
on me. Sometimes I can't even open up my windows. I can't, because sometimes you sit down, I'm not lying to you, sit down, next minute you're coughing because of dust. This is the first, I open up in the morning, I close it. Because sometimes you can sit down and next minute you think something's in your throat. It's the dust.
A statement on this issue from TfL says, "We understand the importance of minimising noise levels for our neighbours living in close proximity to London Underground ventilation shafts and are determined to do what we can to achieve this. We would encourage residents to contact us if there are any issues so we can investigate." However, Theo didn't seem to know what this building emitting all this noise was. Nobody was consulted prior to its installation, and nobody from TfL has checked in with residents since. Theo isn't the only resident who's been left in the dark.
Didn't actually know what it was. I thought it was a generator or something I didn't know at the time. I think it took me a couple of years to get used to it.
That's Nicola, who lives just opposite.
It's weird because now I think I've just become so acclimatized to the sound. When I open a window, I notice it automatically. Like when I'm walking to the house, I notice it. if I'm up late, I notice it, and I notice when it goes off around 1 something in the morning. People comment on it as well. Like if someone's coming to do work, they'll comment, oh, how'd you put up with that noise? And then I'm reminded of the noise. I think I've noticed it more during COVID because I'm a counsellor. So I'll have sessions. So in the summer, it gets really hot in here, but I can't have the windows open because of that sound. I'd have to turn the volume up, but I can have the window open if I'm watching TV. But if I'm having a conversation, I can't have the windows open. That's a good question, actually. If I'd known about the noise, would I have moved here? Probably, because at the time my mum was really ill at the time, so it wasn't really an option. So probably, yeah, based on that. But if I was a homeowner and it was a choice of buying a home, probably not.
I mean, you say you notice it at night. Do you think it's affected your behaviour or your mood in any way?
I think when there's been things that have woken me up and then I hear it, then that's affected me being able to go back to sleep quick, because usually I could go back to sleep at the drop of a hat. I've always been that type of person. But if I'm woken up by something like a disturbance outside, then it will take me a lot longer to get back to sleep.
A possible solution to the residents in Tottenham Hale could be found at the other end of the Victoria Line in Brixton. There, a local residents group fought to get the ventilation shaft on Pulross Road switched off and won after their sleep was being disrupted as well.
My sleep was quite bad. I would have to take sleeping pills. I'm a teacher. Sometimes I'd feel exhausted at work.
Nigel Duckers teaches journalism in a local college and used his expertise to issue a series of freedom of information requests to TfL and Lambeth Council.
Initially, I think we just wanted to find out how many people had complained, whether people had complained, what the parameters were for the commissioning of the shaft in the first place, because all these problems originate from 2010 when it was upgraded. Now, when they upgrade something like this, there's an audit trail. So there's planning. They had consultants report. They had acoustic reports. So gradually, we managed to prize most of these things out of them and piece together the story of the ventilation shaft. Well, the story's essentially simple. When they built this ventilation shaft, or when they upgraded it, they promised local residents that it wouldn't be heard because the amount of sound emission would be below what's called background sound. So, it's just fading into the background. That was their promise. And they took measurements at that time, and the background sound at that time was 37 decibels. Now, by their own readings, they've never, ever been able to meet that. So they've broken their promises. My position is they actually should run it below background sound. Now, background sound maybe is changed. We don't mind if it runs below background sound. But anything over that is intrusive. And there's been times when the decibel reading by their own measurements has been 3 times the background sound.
Nigel actually thinks that this goes beyond the promises that TfL make to themselves and residents.
Well, there are standards. Okay, so there's a British standard for the emission of sound levels for industrial noise, and it's related to background sound. Now, there is a tolerance of 5 decibels in that. TfL most recently been arguing that they want to have those 5 decibels of tolerance. Now, I think that's a really bad position for them to take. I mean, why start out by trying to hit the absolute minimum standard, which according to those regulations is annoying? If they could hit it, I'd be very surprised. I mean, they've never hit it in the past.
One request Nigel made was for minutes of a meeting between TfL representatives and Lambeth Council. In the minutes, the Environmental Health Officer of Lambeth Council was actually quoted as saying, "It is highly unlikely that Lambeth would issue a statutory noise abatement order should any complaint be received, and the council would be happy to defend against any complaint." Essentially, putting the needs of TfL above their own residents. I asked Lambeth if they would like to comment, and I haven't heard back.
I think TfL have been quite cynical over the years and are still being cynical. The only reason they turned the shaft off at Christmas 2019 was they couldn't bear the publicity. Christmas ruin for Brixton residents. No Silent Night for Brixton residents. They basically were forced to turn it off. In the past, they've cleaned it, but they've never tackled the problem. The basic problem is how they built it in the first place. So I don't have much optimism that they are, long-term, really serious about sorting the problem out, particularly when they turn the thing back on.
Also involved in the efforts to quieten down the noise in Brixton was architect Tony White. He lives pretty much next door to the ventilation shaft.
I can certainly understand how the situation has come about where, it looks like TfL did the work that they should have done in terms of designing this shaft to deal with the new throughput of air, and they had an acoustic consultant. In fact, they had more than one acoustic consultant, I think, and they designed something accordingly. But as you can find, things don't necessarily go according to the design figures in the end, and I think probably the dirt and the stuff that gets trapped in here, and we have had, other neighbours have also complained in particular about bits of what looks like burnt newspaper coming out of the shaft, which basically are bits of newspaper that have been left in the underground, and because you've got this throughput of air, it's sucking them through, shredding it through whatever sort of mesh they have, and spitting it out the top of the shaft. I'm sure, and I think probably the experience is borne out, that just destroys the acoustic performance of the installation in a short period of time.
What would a good compromise look like for you?
We have actually suggested to TfL that because they did this work to clean the shaft, they then took measurements at half speed and full speed. Full speed was still not acceptable, but half speed, as we've said, is fairly okay actually. So from our point of view, if half speed was run at all times, that there are no trains running in the shaft, and it could be maintained so as to work at that level, I don't think we'd have a problem with it at all. So we actually suggested that to TfL and said, look, why don't you run it? We recognise that you want to cool the system. Why don't you run it under those conditions, which we're telling you we're happy with, and see what the results are? There was the opportunity there for them to do that. They didn't take it.
Back in Tottenham now, and after some of my own Freedom of Information requests, I discovered that TfL have indeed conducted noise readings of the ventilation shaft on Antill Road. On these noise readings are two values. One of just the background noise, known as the L90 value, and one that also includes passing traffic. A footnote states, the L90 value is the underlying background noise that is dominated by the fan, clearly admitting that the fan is the background noise itself. TfL have also told me that they investigate every complaint they receive. The last complaint about the ventilation shaft on Antill Road in Tottenham was in March 2020. But on the list of historic noise readings I requested, the last noise reading was made in August 2016. So, it wasn't investigated that thoroughly then. Although elsewhere in London, the vent shafts don't tend to be as loud as these ones in Tottenham and Brixton. Here's one you can't even hear in Clapham, well below the background noise of traffic. And here's one that even has its own house in West London's Hayes Mews that can't even get above the background noise of construction. And what does Theo think about this?
Where's that in West London?
Mayfair.
You understand? Mayfair. They got the same thing they put in Clapham, they can put in here. Why can't they do that? We're all human beings. It's not that Clapham's a different era. That's what I put it down to. That's where the money belt is.
It's no wonder Theo finds it laughable. These structures disturb people's sleep, stop them having conversations with the windows open, make their gardens useless, spit out dust, cause stress, and will no doubt affect house prices. I've visited many across London, and the structures in more affluent areas seem to be more hidden away and are either far less noisy or away from residential areas. You can find more information on this topic at georgepowell.online/tones from underground, where there'll also be information on how you can sign a petition to help the residents in Tottenham Hale get a bit more peace and quiet.